Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Environment Select Committee meeting today. So my name is Ellen Jai. I'm a Democratic Services Officer and I'm the clerk to the committee. So I'd like to open today's meeting by asking for nominations for a chairman. Yes, Councillor Henning.
I'd like to nominate Councillor Nick Murray.
And do I have a seconder? Councillor Chamberlain, thank you. Are there any other nominations? Councillor Wayman.
I would like to nominate Councillor Nick Holder.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder for that one? Councillor Munns, thank you.
Ellen,
Yes.
being as we've got new members with us, might it be sensible to spend a couple of minutes just allowing Nick to introduce themselves and potentially for the group to ask some questions?
So in the procedure, it's usually we call for nominations and then go straight to a vote.
Okay.
However, if members are inclined to do it, then you can, but procedurally, it's usually just nominations and vote.
Okay. I just thought, I mean, you know, I've got certain thought on it, hence me seconding Nick Holder. I thought I'd just share it with the group if that's okay. It's a very simple thing, really, which is, as some of you all know, I was the previous cabinet member for Environment and Waste, and during my sort of first few weeks, and as I was receiving briefings from officers, it became very apparent that the environment portfolio is extremely broad, and actually, it's not just about green issues, you know, environmental issues. It is the wider environment. It's our surroundings that all of us as Wiltshire residents share. So what I'm looking for in a chair is someone that has that understanding, that breadth, isn't necessarily, you know, too green, necessarily too anti-green, just someone who understands the breadth of it. And so with previous cabinet experience, both in the environment portfolio, but also highways, Nick seems a good fit to bring that sort of balanced view. Whereas I know from working with Nick Murray, he's very passionate on the green side, which is fantastic. You know, that's why I think he's a brilliant addition to this committee. But I would just like to see a bit more balance in the chair role.
Councillor Henning.
On the back of that, my nomination, Nick Murray. I've worked with Nick for the last 4 years. He's been my vice chairman of the Chippenham Area Board. Yes, he has a strong green theme running through, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I've found his experience and his help with me as chair over those 4 years. This is not a short period of time. I've learned to trust Councillor Murray and appreciate his broad range of experience as well.
Thank you. So if we would like to go to a vote then, so all those in favour of Councillor Murray, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I've got 7 there, and then all those in favour of Councillor Holder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So Councillor Murray is duly elected as the chairman of the Environment Select Committee for the forthcoming year.
Great, thank you very much. So thank you very much, everybody, for electing me as chair of this committee. I'll say a few words in a moment, but my first task and the next item on the agenda is to ask for nominations for vice chair for the select committee for the coming year. So do I have any nominations for vice chair? Councillor Dens.
Chair, I'd like to propose Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you very much. Do we have any other nominations? No?
A seconder just for that one.
Okay, can I have a seconder for Councillor Chamberlain?
Thank you.
Okay, if we have no other nominations, then I declare Councillor Chamberlain Vice Chair of the committee. Thank you very much. So item 3 on the agenda is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies for absence, Ellen?
None that I'm aware of, Chair.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. A copy of the minutes were included in your agenda packs, and I've been assured by the current by the officers that the current committee can approve the minutes of the last committee meeting, even though members may have not been in attendance, unless there are any objections that committee members would like to raise on the minutes themselves. Has anybody got any comments or objections to those minutes being approved? I don't see any. In that case, I propose the committee approves the minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting held on 4th of March, I believe, 2025. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Dens, thank you very much. Declarations of interest. Item 5 is declarations of interest. Would any member like to make a declaration of disclosable interests or dispensations granted by the Standards Committee? And just for the benefit of those present and the public, I point out that members have completed a register of interests, of which their relevant pecuniary and non-pecuniary interests are listed, which is out there in the public domain. But if there are any additional or pressing interests in relation to this meeting, please do declare them. Don't have any of those. Thank you very much. Next, item 6 is Chairman's announcements. So, first of all, I'd like to thank you all again for electing me as Chair of the committee, and thank you all for putting yourselves forward and serving on this committee. I believe the Environment Select Committee fulfils a vitally important role, and I'm looking forward to working with you all and other members of the Council and officers. The scope of what we cover, as we've seen, could not be broader and more important than it is right now, particularly at times of worsening crises in climate, nature, challenges in terms of where and the way we live, how we get around in our future, and economic prosperity and equity. I hope my own background and experience, which extends beyond just environment and sustainability, although I've had many years in that subject, in the business world and wider than that, it will be useful in supporting and guiding the committee. I'm going to continue with a few words of introduction to the committee, after which I'll ask you all to introduce yourselves, stating your name and division, and briefly, if you wish to, you can say a few words about yourself in relation to your role on the committee. So, overview and scrutiny in Wiltshire Council serves a crucial function as a counterbalance to executive powers, as we've seen in our briefing. It bestows the committee with statutory powers to scrutinise decisions, both planned and implemented by Cabinet and Council. And as a committee, we have authority to access information, evaluate and make recommendations, and even call in executive decisions where appropriate, engaging witnesses, independent experts, as well as members of the public in the process. Our work will need to be structured, inclusive, evidence-led and free of party politics. It will be led by myself and the Vice Chair, supported by officers and guided by items on the Cabinet's forward work plan, as well as referrals from full council, from members and at times from the public. We'll cover climate, natural environment, but also planning, highways, housing, street scene, economic development and regeneration. And we'll make use of task groups and rapid scrutiny exercises to focus on specific and detailed topics. As Chair, my role will be to steer and facilitate the committee, but it's your committee and we will depend upon inclusive and collaborative endeavour. The quality of scrutiny and the impact we'll make will depend on all of you. And I can see, looking around the table, that we have some fantastic talent and experience in our group. So I'm very pleased about that. There are a few things I'd ask you as members of the Environment Select Committee before we get started, and apologies if I'm repeating what you've been hearing in the briefing, but I think it's important. So firstly, you've hopefully all attended the ONS induction session. For anyone who hasn't, the video and slides are available on the Councillor Hub, and I'd request you please use them. Secondly, and this is aimed more at the new members of the Council, please read the papers and have questions in mind in advance. I appreciate it's not always easy given the sheer size of some of the reports and background papers that we receive, and that is something I will try and look at in terms of possible streamlining and supplying of background information or briefings in advance to sort of help us get through that. Thirdly, I think Simon said this earlier before our meeting, please find a substitute if as early as possible if you can't attend. Fourth, please put yourselves forward for task groups and rapid scrutiny exercises and encourage fellow members, any other councillors who have got relevant skills and experience to get involved. Fifth, please keep focused, that is on what we're trying to achieve in terms of improving decision making and where necessary holding the council and the cabinet to account, including coming up with clear evidence-based recommendations where these are needed. And these can be additional to the recommendations that we're putting forward because we may not have captured everything in looking at it in advance. And finally, please be considerate and respectful to each other and the officers whose service areas are being scrutinised. Having been on the other side of the fence in a former role, I'm very aware it can be quite intimidating to be questioned by a collection of councillors who don't always fully appreciate officers' remits and limitations in terms of their scope. Having said that, and as the Chair of Overview and Scrutiny said last week, we know that senior officers teams welcome robust scrutiny and regard it as vital to improving the council's performance. So don't be afraid to question and challenge, which is our responsibility to do on behalf of the people who elected us. Thank you very much for your attention. So I'll now go around the table and just ask you to briefly introduce yourself. You only need to say your name and division, but you can say more if you wish to quite briefly. So Councillor Murray.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Jerry Murray for Tisbury and the Dawnheads. Before coming here, I was a parish councillor for a dozen years and a neighbourhood planner for about 10 years, leading a neighbourhood plan group. So my interests are, well, widespread, but primarily in housing, planning and related issues such as flooding, which is a particular issue in our area. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Urquhart.
Thank you. It's Augusta Urquhart Nichols. I know
Okay,
it's difficult to get your mouth around.
Apologies.
Carn, Chilvester and Abbott. Primarily, I think I am here because I'm really keen to get to grips with high street regeneration, local economy issues. I think probably a lot of you will agree with me that a number of our towns in Wiltshire are experiencing this cycle of declining footfall, leading to a reduced offering, leading to declining footfall, and round it goes. And I'm really keen to get my head around that issue with your support, hopefully. In terms of green, environmental stuff, I think my key here is that I'm really keen on achievable, evidence-based, measurable solutions that we actually, as a local authority, can impact. I'm not interested in greenwashed vanity projects that offer little return on investment. Thank you.
Councillor Carbon.
Trevor Carbon, Councillor for Atworth, Holt and Staverton.
Thank you. Councillor Holder.
Councillor Nick Holder, the councillor for Bower Hill. For those of you who don't know where Bower Hill is, it's on the outskirts of Melksham. I've been a councillor for Bower Hill for 6 years and interested particularly around how we can influence planning, because all of the suggested housing for the Melksham area neighbourhood is scheduled to go into Bower Hill. And if all of that comes forward, then I will have about 1,400 new homes built in my community with little in terms of infrastructure. Appreciate that's due to NPPF. But I'm very keen to make sure that where we can influence sustainable development with decent facilities for our communities. I also have some sympathy with what Augusta has just said. I'm keen that any of our officers' time on, particularly around net zero, actually benefits the residents who send us here. I'm not terribly keen on, to use your phrase, vanity projects that don't actually benefit our residents. And I'm keen to make sure that the officer time that is being utilised is actually for our residents and not necessarily businesses that don't frankly contribute huge amounts in terms of our income to this authority. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much. Councillor Cluer.
Good afternoon, Zoe Cluer, councillor for Redlinch and Lanford. It's my first time on a scrutiny committee, so I'm looking forward to understanding more about it, what it's all about, and the wide remit of work we're going to be covering here. One other thing that you may not know, but I sit on the New Forest National Park Authority as well, because the northernmost tip of Wiltshire also sits in the national park. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Wayman.
Thank you. Councillor Bridget Wayman for the Nadder Valley, which lies virtually 100% within the Cranbourne Chase National Landscape, about which I am particularly passionate, as you might have heard this morning in Cabinet. I want to protect our countryside, particularly the beautiful national landscapes, from any sort of inappropriate development, including, as Councillor Holder and Councillor Urquhart-Nichols have said, any vanity projects. And we must ensure that it is anything like that is to the benefit of all our residents and not to disadvantage them in any way. Thank you.
Councillor Munns.
Thank you. Councillor Dominic Munns. I'm the member for the Lavingtons, which is a small rural, not quite as rural as some, but rural nonetheless, community about 15 minutes south of Devizes. My interest really, I mean, everyone has touched on it in certain extents. It's really about making sure that the decisions and the scrutiny that this committee brings and that the council brings is balanced, and it represents the views of residents in my division. So I'll pay particular interest to our crossover with transport and highways, and how we seek to decarbonise where we can, but also protect those residents who have no choice but to drive a petrol or diesel vehicle.
Thank you, Councillor Munns. Councillor Parks.
That'll do.
That'll do. Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, Councillor Bill Parks on Warminster North and Rural. Previously was a district councillor, I'm a town councillor, and I don't think it's any secret that I, in an earlier life, was service head for highways here for many years in this authority, going way back into Wiltshire County Council. So my interests are obviously highways, street scene, and more recently I've been portfolio for waste, so I've been following all the new changes that are coming through on the waste contracts. Those will be my interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Henning.
Yeah, Councillor Ross Henning, Chippenham, Loudon and Rowden. I'm pleased to be back doing a bit of scrutiny. I probably haven't done any at this council since the start of the Unitary Council, where I was a councillor here, although I did take some time out between then and now. The last 8 years I have been working in areas of the council where I believe my experience best helped. But it's good to be back in a scrutiny committee, especially the Environment Committee, where I can bring my experience to this group. I was at first perhaps sat in this room 40 years ago, so I've been around for quite a long time. I might even have been on the Wiltshire County Council when you were there. I've also been a district councillor and a town councillor over that time as well. And Nick, I kind of have some sympathy for you in Melksham. I'm in Loudon and Rowden and Chippenham. There is thousands of houses being built in my division, and that will continue obviously to the east of Chippenham probably in the future. So I'm very much with you on that, and it's about making sure that the infrastructure is there, plus the sense of community that needs to be built in these huge estates that are huge areas of housing, because that I think is probably one of the most important things, and all the things that are attached to building that sense of community. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Henning. Councillor Dens.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Martin Dens. I'm a newly elected councillor for Rural Bassett South and West. I served as a town councillor for Rural Bassett before that. By trade, I'm an interim manager and transformation consultant. So I spent quite some time doing the transformation for the corporate world at the board level. So my interest here is very keen, obviously, in getting the best return on investment on what our taxpayers' money is spent on, and obviously in the interest of the future generations of Wiltshire, probably above all. So yeah, as I said, I'm here to look and to contribute to the efficient governance of the council and the way the money is spent in the interest not only in Wootton Bassett, whose residents I represent, but also for the entire county. From my perspective, it's very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, hello, Phil Chamberlain. I'm the newly elected councillor for Cullen and Box in the northwest of the county. I'm taking over from Councillor Brian Matthew, who I know brought in the Climate Emergency Act policy here as well. So looking to follow in his shoes. I'm newly minted, so I'm learning every day and probably will be for 4 years to come. And looking forward to learning from everybody here as well. Way back in the day, but not as way back in the day as some colleagues, I did communications for Wiltshire Council for their waste services team. So I'm aware about the complexities of the operations sitting behind what the public sees and the different pressures for that as well. And being able to understand what those complexities are and then communicate that to the public, things that we would like to do or the public wants. And the answer is always a bit more complicated than that. And I think understanding those complications, but also finding solutions and ways to communicate that effectively. I work at the University of Bath looking at evidence-based solutions that are impactful for improving government policy. So I'm very much about trying to think about solutions that work and then we can explain and the many ways which people feel they can take hold of as well. So I look forward to working with everybody here on the giant portfolio that this committee has. Chair.
Councillor Wakeman.
Councillor Eric Wakeman for Stephen Park and Dariads in Chippenham. I come to this council as also newly minted, as has been described. I have a background in engineering, manufacturing, and at the moment currently working in sustainability and decarbonisation in aerospace manufacture. So from an environmental perspective, that's hopefully some experience I can bring here. You'll find that I'm quite data-led. I have, having worked in process engineering and manufacturing, this is part of the way that I think, so I'll be looking to see that things are evidence-based. But equally, I'd like to see the opportunity to encourage local businesses within Wiltshire to grow sustainably so that we've got the employment that we need within the county.
Thank you very much. I'm Nick Murray. I've already introduced myself. My background formerly was in agriculture, food sector, and then in international development consultancy, doing cost-benefit analysis, and then latterly in environmental consultancy and climate change. I've been on this committee, I think, almost continuously since I joined the council in 2017. And my ward is Chippenham, Monkton. So that's me. So thank you, everyone. That's, as I said, an amazing amount of experience around the table. So I'm looking forward to the next year and beyond in terms of what we can do to really add value to the council and the decisions it's making. Moving on to item 7 then. Our next item is public participation, but I'm told there are no questions or members of the public wishing to speak at today's meeting, which is our first. So that's not surprising. Moving on then to the main agenda, which is developing the Environment Select Committee part of the Overview and Screening Committee's work programme. Item 8, on page 15 of your agenda pack, we have a report setting out the topics recommended for inclusion in the Environment Select Committee work programme by our predecessor committee, based on its experience during the 2021 to 25 council. The report also proposes the next steps for developing a comprehensive overview and scrutiny work programme that reflects the priorities of the council, its members and residents. I will now ask the report author, Simon Bennett, to introduce the report. Over to you, Simon. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Good afternoon. I'm Simon Bennett. I'm Senior Scrutiny Officer that supports the Environment Select Committee. The report developing the work programme, which is item 8 on your agenda pack, sets out topics that the Select Committee under the previous council felt deserve further ongoing scrutiny. It's a fairly long list, but this could be found in Appendix A. As this is your first meeting, the proposals at the end of the report are phrased so that these suggestions are simply a starting point, which can help shape your own work programme. There are several ways the work programme can be shaped, and I've covered some of those previously, but I'll go over them again. And these are also set out in the report. And these include the discussion today. So you have, if you have any immediate issues or topics that you think should be on the work programme, then you can raise those now. You can put forward topics offline by contacting the chairman or myself, and we can provide a steer on how to take those forward. This might include arranging a discussion or conversation with the appropriate cabinet member or relevant officers to understand the issues more fully. And that might also inform whether it's the appropriate place to put that item was actually on the agenda or the sort of work programme. There's also a training event which I draw attention to, which is on the 1st of July. More details will follow. This will include looking at effective questioning skills and some workshopping around potential topics for work plans. For example, what did you hear on the doorstep when you were campaigning in May, and those sorts of issues, and how you might actually bring those forward if they are relevant to this committee. By convention, the chairman and the vice chairman take a leading role in shaping the work plan. And meetings are being put in the diary, or will be put in the diary, with cabinet members and directors to explore upcoming executive priorities and any projects and plans that the committee needs to be aware of, to see how they might be reflected on any developing work plan. Having taken those steps, at the next meeting, there will be a sort of more embryonic work plan will come back for your consideration. And that obviously can be added to and developed further. It's not the sort of end point of that at all. There will, of course, again, be extra capacity built into any work plan programme to ensure that issues arising can be accommodated. Work programme will often look quite considerably further ahead, several months, in fact. So it's always a good idea to have extra capacity if things come to light that you weren't aware of before. As I said, the work programme is dynamic and always evolving. And as I said, the draft will come back to the committee for a discussion at its next meeting. I'm happy to answer any questions before I hand back to the chairman.
Thank you. I'm just looking through the Cabinet Forward Work Plan, and there are a substantial number of issues there, which I think we should be scrutinising. The first item on the list for the Cabinet coming, there's numerous items coming to the 8th of July Cabinet, which is the Household Recycling Centre Delivery Plan, Air Quality Supplementary Planning Document, which I think we ought to be definitely ought to be looking at. There's also the Trowbridge and Westbury Bat Mitigation Strategy to supersede the Trowbridge Bat Mitigation Strategy. That sounds like a bundle of fun. But I think we should be looking at that. I don't know what the Chippenham Avon project is. So that's basically the July. Oh no, we've also got the new term highways consultancy contract. That's going to Cabinet in July, and the award of the new term, well, traffic signal maintenance contract, probably not that desperately important to come here. And then there are numerous items in September, which I also think we should look at. So we've got the food waste treatment procurement method. I mean, that is, food waste treatment is a new item that is being looked at in our waste, terms of our waste disposal. We've also got the parking plan for 2026 to 30 coming to the September Cabinet meeting. We definitely want to look at that. We've got the local nature recovery strategy. That's the draft is going to the Cabinet in October. So I think, you know, there's plenty there in the Cabinet Forward Work Plan that we should be looking at.
Do you want to respond, Simon?
Yes, I mean, what we can do is, obviously, we'll look at the Cabinet Forward Work Plan. It depends on how that works within the schedule of meetings, but there are ways of fitting some of those things in. It might be worth, for example, the Vice Chairman or Chairman having a briefing or some of the means, but we can take that away and look at that in terms of the Cabinet Forward Work Plan and work it into the wider work plan.
Okay, thank you. And my other question was about the Climate Change Task Group. who are the members on that and who are going, presumably, there are now some ex-members of it, I don't know, and who's going to go on it in the future?
All task groups are, there will be a call out to all members. There is currently no membership, so there will be a call out to all members to ask whether they want to become members of that task group. It's then up to the chairman and the vice chairman to appoint those, and that will come back to the select committee in due course, the membership of that. But if you agree that today, that will happen in fairly short shrift.
Okay, and so just looking at our agenda, the date of our next meeting is the 15th of July. And they're looking at the Cabinet forward work plan. There are a lot of items that I think we should be looking at that are going to Cabinet on the 8th of July. So are we going to, do we want to look at them before Cabinet? I suggest that we do, rather than post-Cabinet.
Okay. Thanks, Councillor Wyman. I just wanted to say the next meeting will be put back, so we will have a bit more time. The officers are looking at a slot for it at the moment to fit in with other meetings and so on. Put back, so it'll be later than it would have been towards the end of July, which will give us a bit more time.
Miss Cabinet meeting entirely?
We will on this occasion, yeah. I mean, there are always going to be bigger gaps between our meetings and Cabinet meetings.
Can I suggest that the chairman and vice chairman take that away, and they need to have conversations then with the cabinet member and the directors in terms of how we can schedule that into any forward work plan. It's giving them time to respond and to. There are different ways to actually look and tackling this, but we'll need to actually work within the time scale that there is. It might not be enough time to actually come back to this select committee, but there'll be a briefing with the chairman and vice chairman, which will report it back to the select committee.
I have an issue with that, Chair, because, I mean, there's really no point having any select committees if they're simply bypassed by way of diary conflicts, calendar conflicts. We need to find a way around it. Select committees are here to bring the required scrutiny, so it has to pass through here before it goes on elsewhere.
Yeah, but of course there are more cabinet meetings than there are select committee meetings. We're always going to be slightly out of sync, but the endeavour will be to try and get in as early as possible on that decision-making process. So that's what we will try to do. Before we sort of get into broad discussion, I'm conscious Councillor Holder wants to speak. It'd be good if we finish, Simon, with your responses to questions. Yeah, to go round and see what additional items people think. Because I think we've got two things here. We've got what we'd like to see scrutinised, listed down, and we've got the forward work plan for Cabinet and for Council that we need to look at what's coming through, and we need to combine those two things. And at the end of the day, there's going to be far too many small items to get through with the time we've got available for this committee. So we will have to look at where we move those to task groups where necessary or prioritise where necessary. But at this stage, I think if we just go out and sort of expand into everything we think is important and get that down, we can then start to attempt that process, if that makes sense to everybody. Councillor Holder, do you want to say something?
I did, Chair, thank you. It was really, I wasn't going to say anything on what my colleagues have said, but, you know, I'm really struggling to understand, and this was not the point I was going to make, but I really am struggling to understand why in the slides that we've been shown earlier today and been sent in our email, it says, how is your work programme formed? And the first thing it says at the top of the slide is items on Cabinet forward work plan. I'd really like to understand who's made the decision to move the next committee meeting back. I don't understand why that's been made. And I do really, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but I would actually like to put a motion to the vote here today, if it's possible, and Simon or Ellen, you'll advise, whether we actually require the Vice Chair and Chair to arrange a meeting before the Cabinet meeting where all those items are being discussed, because it clearly says how your work programme is formed, items on Cabinet forward work programme. And if we're not going to be able to do that, what is the point? What is the point of Cabinet bringing things forward, saying they want to have an open and transparent administration, if this select committee is not able to collectively to look at what's coming forward. I accept and respect that historically chairs and vice chair would have a briefing, but that actually denigrates, in my opinion, the role of this committee, because we are here to scrutinise the executive. So I don't know whether you, Ellen and Simon, you want to have a conversation, but if I'm able to bring a motion forward, I would do. The point I actually really wanted to make relates to what Simon said about the meeting on the 1st of July, which I do think is a really useful meeting to have to shape an overview and scrutiny. My concern is that clashes with the Strategic Planning Committee, on which I sit and other members sit. So can we please do some work with Dem Services to make sure that maybe the overview and scrutiny shaping meeting is amended in terms of time, so that members of, not just myself and Councillor Munns, who are members of the Strategic Planning Committee, can attend both? Because I think it's both really important that we have the opportunity to attend those meetings. That was the point I wanted to make, Simon.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holder. So on the clash with the ONS and strategic planning, you can look at that. Yeah. In terms of this forthcoming cabinet meeting, as was pointed out earlier in the briefing, we can't always necessarily be in advance of everything because of the timing of our meeting. So we'll cope with it as best we can. And this is the beginning of this committee period. But going forward, absolutely, you know, we want to be able to consider those things as early as possible in the right order, and that's what we're going to try and do. So, any other points?
So you won't allow me to put a motion then?
Well, it's just a one-off. It's just now that we have this problem, isn't it? Because in future we can look at the cabinet work plan further ahead. So I would certainly support what Nick was suggesting, that we should maybe look at having something, if possible, before cabinet. I'm not sure whether it would be feasible or not. It's obviously quite short notice, but if we could, it would be a good idea. And again, I haven't looked at the forward work plan in the same level of detail that maybe Bridget has, but there are some things that we can't do much about. I tried the Cranbourne Chase this morning. You know, there's not a lot of point in us scrutinising that because it's just a document that's going to go through anyway. Whereas there might be other things on that agenda, that list that you read out, that we could take a useful look at.
Thank you.
So again, if we can get something in beforehand, then so much the better.
Possible for me to bring a motion to the committee as I asked before?
Thank you very much, Chair. I'm in support of what's been said by Councillor Carbon and Councillor Holder. It's a very, very busy time at the beginning, not just of a new council, but a new administration. There's so much coming thick and fast. I think this is one of the more important meetings to bring forward if we possibly can, rather than be waiting for the next and subsequent few when a lot of things will already have been established. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I can hear what you say, Councillor Munns.
Yeah, just a quick one. Sorry, to take you back to Climate Emergency Task Group membership. Simon, you mentioned that chair and vice chair would decide members and then bring it back to the committee. I just want to understand the mechanics there. Are you bringing it back for ratification? Is the group as a whole voting on that membership?
I'll ask Simon to explain that.
Fine.
I don't think it's never been voted on before in terms of that. It's simply for ratification. It's normally there's an attempt to make that as broad cross section because it makes sense to make a broad cross section of members as possible in that.
I agree. I mean, it'll be no surprise. That's exactly where I was going with my question. I want to ensure that breadth's there. But I am also conscious that my idea of breadth may be different from another person's idea. So bring it back to the entire group for ratification would seem sensible. I'd request that we do that.
Okay, thank you. So, Councillor Holder, coming back to your point, I've had advice from the officers. You're perfectly free to make a motion to call an extraordinary meeting, which is sooner than the current planned one and in advance of Cabinet. But it's down to the officers really as to whether that can be fitted in and what else is going on. But you can certainly make that motion if you want to. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Chair. Yes, I would, and I'll be seeking a seconder for that. But there we go.
So the motion is basically that we have an extraordinary meeting to get in before the next Cabinet so that we can discuss some of those items. And we're proposing that, but it will be down to officers to respond in terms of whether that's possible. So that's what we're voting for. Can I have a show of hands? All those in favour of that? Okay, that seems to be unanimous. Anyone against? One against. Okay. So that's carried. So we will come back to the committee ASAP on that. And you'll come back to me as soon as you can. Right, thank you very much. So coming back to the agenda item, as I said, we're trying to now kind of at the start look at all the possible topics that we think we are most important in relation to what we do know about what's coming up, and that will change. So, I mean, I can go around the table or you can just raise your hands. Are the things we want to add to that long list, which we can then condense down? Some of these things can be combined because they probably fit under other things. I've got a few I can suggest, but I'll let members of the committee pick up on it first. Anybody else got any thoughts on what else needs to be included? No, I mean, I will certainly concur with Councillor Wayman that nature recovery strategy didn't seem to be on there, and it absolutely needs to be. I'm not sure where that is in terms of the consultation. Perhaps Simon can advise, but it was coming up for consultation, wasn't it? You don't know, so we'll look into that. Councillor Dens.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I want to say that first I voted against this motion in the past because I think our job is to do the right thing. And it appears to be slightly difficult to comprehend how we can scrutinize the decisions which haven't been made yet. But on this particular topic, I think that we have plenty of items on our agenda, and my view is that we would probably rather want to do these things in the right way and deliver on this agenda before we jump into something else. So I think it's pretty much comprehensive list. So my view is that we should tackle it first and make sure that we deliver on the expectations on this quite comprehensive list before we start adding something to the plate.
Yeah, thank you. We have decided that now, so we are going to be doing that, looking into that. Any other suggestions for things that should be on the long list? If not, I mean, I've got a couple more. I'm sorry?
Yeah, so I mean, we can chip in with this to add to this list at any time, isn't it? We're not.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, we
I
can continue to bring them back and discuss them at our
I
meetings.
just feel a bit on the spot because I'm sure there are things that I would like to see added to the list, but this is.
This isn't a once in a you know,
Not a one-time only.
one-time only offer. We can do that at any meeting. We will look at the work plan. Yeah, it's just an opportunity for everybody to get a sense of what's on there and what else they'd like to see on there, really. The couple of others I had, and they may be buried in there, Simon, I don't know, but there was flooding, which I think probably comes under climate change adaptation to some extent anyway. So if we could make sure that's covered, because it is critically important, falls within our remit. And the cultural strategy we did look at before, and I think, I don't know what other committee members think, but I think it's pretty important for a lot of the topics we're dealing with that we convey the right messages and get the right feedback, and we're engaging with the public on them rather than making decisions and the public wondering why. So, you know, with the topic, particularly with climate and environment, we're finding communications are so important. So I think, and that last time we looked at it, we did come up with a recommendation that climate change was one of the key themes. I don't know where that got to or when that particular strategy is coming back for us to have another look at, but we could look at that. Anything else that people would like to see on there or draw attention to? No, I mean, as I say, you can come to the chair and the officers at any point if you've got suggestions, and we'll put them back into the meetings, and you can raise them at the meetings as well. So it is an ongoing thing. Councillor Wayman.
Yes, I mean, we have got in the in our forward work plan, the local transport plan, which, you know, if Cabinet are going to look at the parking plan, that will be part of the local transport plan. So if there are various topics that do come up within Cabinet, they probably fall within the broader scope of the remit of some of our own topics that we want to look at. But I do want to I want to see them before they go to Cabinet. Just because the Cabinet haven't made a decision is that we look at officers' recommendations and we can look at those and make our own suggestions, which Cabinet then might want to adopt, which is just explaining to Councillor Dens that that's the way these things will tend to work.
Absolutely. I think we can have a lot of influence by getting in early before things have gone too far down the line, and we'll attempt to do that. But it's not to say that if we don't manage that, we shouldn't still look at the decisions, because we can feed back into the next iteration, or we can make observations about implementation, etc. Yeah. As you did this morning. Thank you.
Councillor Lay's got her hand up online.
Ah, okay. Councillor Lay's not on the committee, but we can take questions at any point. So, Councillor Lay, would you like to say something as a former member?
Yes, sorry, I'm listening to everything you're saying. What I was going to say was a little bit what Bridget's just said, is that a lot of the times in the past, what we've done is we've looked at forward programmes so that we can shape decisions and be part of that decision-making process and scrutinise things before Cabinet might have made a decision, or full council. But the other thing that I wonder, have you got on your agendas, forgive me if I've not seen it or I'm not up to date with it, but I've got some other issues of my own, but is the Gypsy and Traveller strategy, where are we with that, and how is it moving forward? And are we going to be taking any more part in shaping that one? Because obviously it's something that's of a big concern to many of our communities, particularly mine.
Thank you, Councillor Lay. I believe we have got that on the list, or it's a subset of the local plan, and I think we will be returning to it. Thank you. Councillor
Erkin-Nicholl, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Just to note, really, may not be of massive importance, but just looking through the kind of priority status of everything on this list, there are 6 things that are medium and everything else is high. So I think perhaps a little bit of work on the prioritisation might need to occur. Thank you.
Thank you. That's a very good point, and we will do that. Any other comments or ideas? If not, then I'm going to move to the draft recommendations, and I'll just read those out. If anyone's got any comments on those, then we'll take those. Otherwise, we'll move to voting to agree those. So they are to approve the legacy topics listed in Appendix A as a starting point for the new Environment Select Committee's work programme in the 2025-29 Council. Number 2, to note the next steps for developing the Environment Select Committee's work programme further, as set out in the report, including discussions between the Select Committee chairs and vice chairs with the executive and directors to gain a more informed understanding about key priorities and projects. Number 3, to approve and re-establish the re-establishment of the Environment Select Committee's Climate Emergency Task Group, if agreed by the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee, with the appointment of the task group membership delegated to the chair and vice chair following the invitation of expressions of interest from eligible members, and that includes throughout the council, so we can draw as widely as possible on a different set of skills. And number 4, to improve the initial items requested for the committee's work programme as in Appendix B. Right, and we will add Councillor Holder's proposal, which was agreed as the 5th recommendation, which is to explore whether an extraordinary select committee meeting or other form of scrutiny covering reports going to Cabinet in July can be scheduled, subject to officers having discussions with the executive and officers. Is everybody happy with those 5 recommendations? All those in favour? Yeah, that's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. So now we come on to item 9, which is Cabinet member update, but I'm not sure the Cabinet member's with us today, but this will be a sort of standing item so that the Cabinet member can... is the Cabinet member with us? No. So they can update us and keep involved with the committee's work. Which brings us on to item 10, which is the date of the next meeting. Sorry, there's a question. Councillor Holder.
Sorry, Chair. I do find it slightly disappointing that this committee, by the way, not your chairing of it, this committee has not had the newly appointed Cabinet members attending. I watched the Health Select Committee meeting last week. And all of the Cabinet members with some responsibility that would be scrutinised by the Health Select did come to the meeting and introduce themselves, which I thought was a very, very good process for them to have done that. I do think it's disappointing, given that there was actually a cabinet meeting this morning at which all of the cabinet members, bar one, attended in person, that they weren't able to stay this afternoon and introduce themselves to this newly formed committee, which is made up of a number of newly elected members, and it's a newly formed committee. I don't know how we can record that, but I'm disappointed that they haven't found time today to come here to introduce themselves. Just want to make that point. Indeed, but I understand that, but there is more than one cabinet member that oversees the work of the Environment Select Committee. So I would be delighted, if deferring to the chair, if you step forward and introduced yourself to the members of the committee.
I'm happy for you to do that if you wish to do that.
Hello, I'm only one of the cabinet members that has responsibility over the areas that this committee looks at. So the leisure, communities part, which is not on your work plan at the moment. And so I am going to ask some questions about that. But my name's Mel Jacob. I'm deputy leader and I have responsibility for a number of areas, which includes some of the areas that you look at in your group. I'm obviously new to that role as cabinet member, so I'm obviously keen to hear from all of you. And, you know, obviously you've all been really engaged today, and I also share your concerns about the timing of the meeting and the fact that you've obviously not been able to look at items before they get to cabinet. So again, I've already sent a message saying, please, can we make sure that that doesn't happen again? You know, in the spirit of collaboration, obviously we do all want to work together, and that's what my approach very much is. I don't know, I think other cabinet members had items that they had to go away and do, and I'm sure they would have been here if they could do, but it doesn't mean that you're unable to talk to any of us just because we're not here at the meeting. So I'm sorry that you're disappointed, but it may not have been clear that that was an opportunity for people to come and do that. So I apologise on their behalf, but again, everybody's here and really willing to support, and you know, I'm keen for us to have as many items on the scrutiny list as possible, and you know, I'm disappointed that some of the areas in my remit aren't on the list. So hopefully you'll all come up with some of those and add them in as time goes on. But happy to answer any questions. But I was asked in advance if I wanted to report on anything, and I haven't got anything particular to report on at this point. I haven't had the opportunity to get to that point. I'm at the learning and absorbing mode, as I'm sure you'll know. But if they've got questions, I can take them away if you've got particular questions.
Any questions for Councillor Jacob? Don't think so at this stage then, but thank you very much indeed for introducing yourself. And Councillor Holder, your disappointment, your comment will be noted in the minutes, and I will personally make sure I communicate with the cabinet member concerned to make sure they attend the next meeting. Thank you. So that takes us on to the date of the next meeting, which, as we said, is to be determined towards the end of July. But in the meantime, we will endeavour to bring an extraordinary meeting subject to the possibility of that happening. Item 11 is urgent items, and I'm not aware of any urgent items unless any have been brought to me. No. So that is the end of our meeting. I'd be grateful if committee members could just remain a few minutes behind for a quick debrief after the meeting's closed. Thank you very much. So that's the end of the meeting. Thank you.